but the relationship that you are able to build with your client is much more important than any contract that you're going to sign with them. So it's something to be aware of if you are coming from the English speaking world, because when you come from there, you will want to create contracts and agreements very early. While what's more important is to be able to create a collaboration of trust between the vendor and the client.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. Most people underestimate the importance of country-specific expertise when it comes to ERP systems. For them, what difference could it make as it's pure tech? France and Europe are especially unique when it comes to their localization requirements, but the culture plays a huge role as well. So what can companies do if they want to penetrate French market, and why is culture such a huge issue when it comes to ERP implementation? In today's episode, our guest Wassim shares why local expertise is critical for ERP consultants. He also discusses the specific nuances of the France market and what consultants need to know to be successful in this market. Finally, he shares several stories to illustrate the cultural differences and how they might affect the outcome of the ERP projects. Let me introduce Wassim to you. Wassim Sayerh is the CEO of Overto, a digital transformation consultancy in Paris. With over 7 years of experience, he has advised and overseen transformation programs of European companies from different industries and sizes. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Wassim, welcome to the show.
Hey Sam, how are you?
I'm very good, and I'm super excited for this interview. This is, Friday morning here, and for me, I need to get my ERP dose before I head for the weekend. Just to kick things off, do you want to start telling a little bit about yourself and your current focus these days, Wasim?
Yes, so I'm the CEO of Overto Consulting. It's a digital transformation consultancy based in Paris. And with over 7 years of experience, I have advised and overseen transformation programs of European companies from different industries, different sizes, etc. So my focus is about finding the right solution for the problems my companies are encountering within their productivity, their operational efficiency, etc. So I'm not here to impose any kind of solution such as a specific ERP or a CRM or a BI solution to them. I always start by analyzing their needs, trying to understand it, and then come up with the right solution to solve the problem.
Okay, very interesting. So we are definitely going to peel some layers there overall in terms of analyzing the need. And I don't know how many listeners really understand what need analysis really means, to be honest. Sometimes they are going to feel that they can do it themselves. I'm pretty sure you are encountering those clients as well. But
Oh
it's,
yeah.
it's more than just creating a checklist, I guess. So we'll maybe,
Yeah.
if you can offer some of the examples and the stories there, That's probably going to be meaningful for our listeners. But before we do that, we have one of these standard questions that we ask every single guest, and that is going to be your perspective on business growth.
So, business growth. First thing, when we are talking about growth, we need to pay attention. Are we growing our net earnings or only our revenue? Many business owners spend their year very happy about their results because they see the money coming at the bank, only to receive warning signs by the end of the year that there is something wrong. These companies usually care but don't have the means to run unit economics analysis of their different sales channels. So they are present on different sales channels, but they don't know how much does it cost them to be present in a specific sales channel. Very recently, a client was very excited as he started selling on Amazon,
Okay.
and his sales were skyrocketing on the platform. But once we structured our data in terms of the revenues generated by Amazon and the cost for him in terms of warehousing, in terms of marketing, in terms of the commission that Amazon takes, in terms of the consulting company that he hires to help him sell on Amazon, we realized that although revenues were high, the costs that he incurred to sell in the platform were even higher. And since these costs were both complex and delayed, he thought that he was profitable on that channel. So I would say for growth, first make sure that your unit economics allow you to be profitable in the different sales channels that you are present in. Second thing I would say is that you should be looking at how much your growth margin is eaten up by fixed costs. I mean, not growth margin. I mean your revenue margin, the revenues minus the cost of goods sold. How much of it is eaten up by your fixed costs, such as payroll, such as rent, such as warehouse costs, etc. Here again, a client of mine was telling me that that his margin is 50%. Okay, great. But once we factored in how much he has in terms of payroll costs, the warehouse, the rent, etc., that margin drops to 10%. So his accountant made a poor job explaining that to him. But that's something we try to make our clients aware of so that they know where their money is going, so that we can devise strategies in order to make fixed costs eat a much lower fraction of their margin and make them generate the extent of net profit they intend to make. And finally, I would say that in order to grow, the people you are working with need to be and to feel that they are doing something valuable each day.
Yep.
In a project we are starting this month, a client is having a very smart and knowledgeable sales admin manager.
Okay.
But what is she doing all day? She's inputting sales order information on different systems. The CRM, the warehouse system, the accounting system, and so forth. And it's the same information that she and her department is inputting each time.
Yep.
The consequence of that is that there has been a huge turnover in this department, and every time someone leaves, time is required to recruit a new person, and they have to train that new person on processes that are quite blurry to start with. So our objective in the project is to integrate all these systems together so that the information has to be input only once and it's being spread uh, in due time to all of these other systems. So according to our research, this will allow the department to save half of the man hours that are mobilized every month, and that will allow the employees to do things um, that add more value to themselves and to the company. So they will stay longer, and to be able to grow as a company, you need a tightly knit team that will serve as the foundation of the growth of your company.
Great. So very interesting perspective there. Thank you so much for sharing that, and love the story that you shared related to Amazon. I think that's very interesting. And in the e-commerce space, I think you are spot on that people sort of talk about unit economics, contribution margin, but I'm not too sure if they really understand how to calculate it or they have means to be able to calculate it properly to understand the true margin that they are going to have. So obviously that is the layer that we want to touch on. We have so many different layers that we can touch on here, I guess. And I don't know how much time we are going to have in the 30-40 minute episode. So we might want to bring you on again, I guess. But right now, let's start um, with I think that the main topic that we wanted to really cover is going to be the France as well as the Belgium localization overall, right? Because uh, there are going to be country specific requirements that uh, any of the companies, regardless of whether you are going to be e-commerce, manufacturing, are going to have. So I don't know if you have any sort of insights there with respect to businesses when they, let's say, are analyzing the requirements and if they are going to be in France. So, for example, let's say if I'm doing ERP selection for France, I'm probably not qualified to be honest, okay? Because obviously France has very specific localization requirements, very specific taxation requirements, very specific payment processes, right? So, in your experience, when you compare, let's say, France versus Belgium versus some of the other European countries versus whatever else that you have seen, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So do we have like 3 to 4 hours to speak about this?
I mean, we can go on for 30 hours if you like, but in chunks.
Okay. No, I'm just joking. So, a very interesting and true point that you said, is about the language and the culture. So
Yep.
France and Belgium, both countries, they speak French.
Yep.
Uh, Belgium, they speak Flemish as well, but uh, let's go with France. Many French companies prefer to work with service providers who can communicate with them in their native language,
Yeah.
or that at least understand the cultural specificities of France. So although the project will be made, will be run in English,
Yeah.
they want to make sure that the person that they are talking with is someone who understands their culture. And I think it's a good thing, because when there is a cultural mismatch
Yeah.
between clients and the vendor, it might be very problematic. It's not only in France; it's in all the world. You need to ensure that with your vendor you have some the same values and quite the same culture to ensure that the project you are conducting will be successful. So that's the first thing. And I was listening the other day an episode of your podcast with Renis Cromins, the founder of
Yeah.
an e-commerce agency serving Europe,
Yep.
and he was saying that he doesn't know any non-French person who succeeded in the French market.
Yep.
I don't agree 100% with his statement, but I totally understand what
Yeah.
he means.
Yeah.
There are some cultural differences that makes it hard for you to be successful if you have not at least lived in France for a few years, or have been exposed to the French culture at some point in your life. So, yeah, so the language and the culture are something that are very important in this market. Regarding the technical stuff, I would say the biggest difference is concerning the tax consideration, because in France the tax system is quite unique. So not all the ERP systems can handle the French accounting system. Still, you have French companies who use ERPs. I would say there are two solutions that are usually put in place. Actually, three solutions, but you have two families of solutions. So to start with, you have the big corporations. This one, They handle their accounting internally with very big tools such as SAP, Sage, etc. We also have local solutions like Dex. I don't know. There's one of that is very famous, but I lost its name. So they just put all their invoices, all their bills, all their expenses on the software, and it generates for them what we call fake file. Not fake. It's not a fake file. It's an FEC file. It stands for format d'écriture comptable. And this file is what is required in case you have a tax audit. So here everything is done internally, but this can only be only large corporations can have the means to do something like this. The smaller corporations, on the other hand, usually they outsource their tax filing to what we call an expert comptable, which is the equivalent of a CPA in the US, certified public accountant.
Yeah.
So the challenge is to be able to systematically send all the accounting documents, the invoices, the expenses, the invoices to the CPA and not have everything done manually. And for this, we have two solutions. The first one is the company connects its bank account with internal tools that the CPA have within his agency, and so that every time a transaction occurs in the bank account and the bill or an invoice is attached to this transaction, the document is automatically sent to the accountant. The problem with this is that your accounting becomes cash based and it's not accrual based anymore. And that's both non-compliant and it's dangerous for you as you might be led to think that you have enough cash in the bank while a big bill is becoming due tomorrow. So how are your employees getting their paycheck this month? The other way, which is my preferred one, is to create a workflow that sends any invoice, any bill that is recorded in your ERP, whatever is your ERP, compliant with the French accounting system or not, to a specific email address that the accountant puts at your disposal and is proper to your company. And the accountant has an internal system that will read any document that comes to this address. So you just have to create a workflow that directs all the documents that you put in your ERP to that specific address, and they are automatically read and recorded. So these are the three solutions that we use in order to uh, make all the tax duties and be compliant.
Yeah, so some very interesting layers there. So we are going to touch on each of them. Okay. So obviously, and when you talk about the culture, and we need to understand the culture a little bit more, especially when you talk about culture related to ERP systems, right? In my mind, when you look at the ERP systems and the way the implementations are done, the cultural factors are more than just the cultural aspects, right? Because, for example, let's say if I were to consult in Australia or UK or any other countries for that matter, right? They might have the very specific term for a document. For example, whatever I may call invoice, they might call receipt, okay? Or whatever I may call income, they might call profit. In the case of ERP, it could be very confusing because, going back to your comment related to analyzing the requirements. See, if I am the consultant who always consulted in the US or let's say, in North American geographies, and now I'm going for these geographies and I'm trying to understand the requirements, I'm going to understand from my perspective, okay? But that could be $1 million disaster because you were sort of understanding in their head, your head, but that's completely different. So in my mind, the cultural factors, obviously, they could be slightly touchy-feely the way people understand those, right? But here you have real financial risk as well as implication on your project. So I don't know if you're going to have any other follow-up commentary there based on this.
Yes, definitely. Just the VAT aspect is something that is handled very differently from a country to another. For
Yeah,
example, I know that in Canada, I think in India as well, there are two different sales tax, right? And
exactly. In Canada as well.
yeah, you have two different VATs. In France, the VAT is included in the price. In the US, the VAT is excluded from the price and it's called sales tax. So every country has its own specification, and here we are talking only about VAT. So you really need, when you collaborate on a project, be sure that you understand the regulatory environment of the country you are operating in. So not so you don't put your client in a difficult position where you have developed something that is good for him if he was operating in New Zealand, but he's in Spain, so it's not useful to him.
Yeah, so very interesting layer there. And I don't know, honestly speaking, if US has the VAT structure. And my understanding of VAT structure is, it's going to have slightly deeper layers. Okay, that's my understanding of VAT.
Yes,
And when I say slightly deeper layers, meaning it's going to be calculated based on the item category. So yes, the sales
yes,
tax is going to be there. Sales tax is not necessarily well, so in the US, I guess the sales tax is calculated based on the product versus services. I don't know if there are going to be different sales taxes based on the category, even though that gets very nuanced as well per county, per zip. It's different. It's
exactly.
different competition. Okay. But VAT is different. VAT, I don't think the way the VAT works, at least in Canada or India, as far as my understanding goes, it's going to be, you are going to have double taxation, meaning, as you correctly pointed out, that you are going to have a federal structure and then you are going to have the state or the provincial structure,
Mhm.
and each of them, so, you have the federal structure, then it's going to be overridden by your province structure for each of the category, meaning each of the
Yeah,
category is going to have a different taxation. Now, if you go to countries like
exactly.
Mexico, it gets even more nuanced because what they have to do is they have to submit each of the invoice to the tax agencies or the regulatory agencies. So there is no filing as such, okay? You don't even do filing.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah,
interesting. In some countries, for
yeah,
example, I
yeah,
think
yeah.
you mentioned India as well, right? So India allows the monthly as well as the quarterly filing of HST, and that increases so much admin effort, to be honest, just based on the filing,
Mhm.
because you have to file the HST and GST, and they are computing based on the item categories as well, present on the invoice. So it becomes very complicated. So I guess, I don't know, based on
Definitely.
this commentary, I mean, do you have more to share in terms of how France is structured? But based on your description, France does seem slightly simplified, I guess, right?
It's not simplified. It's just that there are some distinction if you are coming from the English-speaking world. For example, when you come from the English-speaking world, contracts are everything. In France, it's not the case. I mean, we have contracts as well, but the relationship that you are able to build with your client is much more important than any contract that you're gonna sign with them. So it's something to be aware of if you are coming from the English speaking world, because when you come from there, you will want to create contracts and agreements very early. While what's more important is to be able to create um, a collaboration of trust between the vendor and the client in order for the client to feel at ease and collaborate with you.
Yeah, and so touch a little bit more on that. So let's say if a new person is coming there, especially if it is going to be a non-French person. So how do you create relationship? I mean, what do you do? Like, I mean, what are some tips that you might be able to offer to the companies who might be, let's say, new to the French territory and they are trying to penetrate French market?
It's very difficult to say. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's the same for you in the US, but making your client feel like family, which mean having dinner with them, asking about them if they have an important event, etc. It's something that is crucial to do to your relationship, with your client. And if you don't do that, you might be perceived as someone who is a bit cold, and they might prefer another vendor to work with another vendor because they feel that the collaboration is warmer and that there will be a better mutual understanding and better communication with this client, with this vendor, I mean.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, and there are always going to be cultural nuances, I guess, across the geographies, and there's also very similar environment, I guess, in the Middle East as well. They have
Mm,
very, very similar, culture. It's probably not going to be like the U.S. The U.S. culture is probably not going to fly just because it's very direct, the way things work
yeah.
here.
Mm-mm. Definitely, definitely.
Yeah. So, have you seen any sort of
Um,
specific challenges when you are part of the, let's say, the project team and look, even the French companies are going to be operating in multiple geographies. They are going to have, people from different geographies, and they all need to work together, right? So, what
yes.
are some of the things that you have seen to be successful in those projects?
I think one of the most important things when we are doing a digital transformation project is to take into consideration the people who will be using the solutions we are developing. A lot of digital transformation consultancies, they think that what they are selling is a technology. I don't think it's the case because a technology is just a generic solution. What you should be doing is really understand what are the pain points of these people who are working at the company. And this will not be the people who will be contacting you as a vendor. You will have a business leader who will be contacting you, but it's very important to not discard these people because these are the ones who are um, the most aware of the pain points of their daily jobs. And if you don't get their adoption, you can develop the most amazing tool, the most sophisticated one. But if nobody wants to use it, your tool is useless. A few weeks ago, I attended a seminar of a senior Salesforce architect, and she was saying you might develop the best solution, but if there is no user in the room, you are doomed. So I think it's really important to make sure that you understand what the end users of your solution are going through every day and find solutions to them and not find a solution only for the executives that are hiring you.
Yeah, so very interesting perspective there. So let's sort of tie everything together. So obviously, we need to put users in mind when we are designing any sort of solution. Obviously, that has to be from their perspective. But when you look at users and if you're going to be asking them their needs, okay, obviously they are probably not going to be as financially feasible. They are not going to be as realistic, more from the software configuration as well as more from the development perspective, right? So, it's really going to be a wish list. And going back to our comment related to how do you sort of analyze the requirement? Because that's kind of an art and science in my mind. You sort of get this when you have been doing this for a very, very, very long time. Then you sort of start understanding the trends. What is a good requirement? What is not a good requirement? Where you are going to get issues? What kind of test cases do you need to capture? But customers feel that, you know what, I'm going to have a bunch of checklists. I'm going to simply use it, and I'm probably going to find a solution, and somehow the solution is going to work. Right? So let's tie all of this together. And from your perspective, when you work with users, what kind of guidelines do you have for them so that they can provide the inputs, but at the same time they are not uh, overly controlling the requirements because that could be a risk as well for the project.
I think you need to have as a digital transformation consultancy a very strong business analyst that will catch every time he feels, or not that only that he feels, but he catches every time the client is not clear in what he wants, and every time there is an ambiguity. Because every time there is an ambiguity, it means the client might be thinking in a certain way, and I, as a system integrator, for example, I might be thinking a different way. So I will develop something that does not correspond or that does not address their needs. So I think it's very important to have a well-trained business analyst who are going to really understand and clear all the ambiguities that remain in the user requirements. And there has been recently this debate about waterfall versus agility. I think that agility is a wonderful thing, but it should be limited to the implementation phase. Everything that is requirement gathering, we should gather as much requirements as possible. Why? Because if I gather only a fraction of the requirements, there might be there might be something in the requirement that is very structural to what I'm gonna build as a solution to the client that I don't know about. So I will start building, and then I will realize there is something really important that touches to the architecture of the solution that I did not take into consideration. And once the client tells me that, I have to build not everything from scratch, but I have to modify the architecture of the solution. And that comes at a cost, and that comes at um, another cost, which is the stability of the solution. It's like you are telling me, Wasim, I want to build a house. I need a swimming pool and two floors, right? Okay,
Yeah.
Sam, very good. I'm gonna design it. Here is the plan. Thank you very much. It's great. Okay, let's build it. At the middle of the construction, you tell me, Wasim, you know what? I want an underground floor. Why haven't you told me that before? So if I were a good business analyst, I would have asked you, okay, Sam, you want two floors? Do you want an underground floor as well in your house? I think that's what makes a difference between a good business analyst. A good business analyst goes beyond what the client tells them and will be able to identify where there can be a source of ambiguity and return that to the client to clarify all ambiguities. And for me, that's a critical success factor for a digital transformation project.
Yeah, so very interesting analogy there. And I think clients sort of can understand these examples, but when it comes to the real life scenario, okay, I see this all the time. Okay, they end up hiring people who might not be as experienced, and obviously, sometimes it's very, very, very hard to determine who is going to have the real experience overall with these things, right? So let's say if you were interviewing a business analyst or the business consultant who is going to be taking care of sort of the SS to B stage. So what are some of the things that you are going to be looking in them to make sure they are going to be able to assess these things so that you are not going to get any sort of surprises in the implementation phase? And my assumption here, based on your description, is that whatever you are doing in that research, the strategy phase, you are trying to avoid trouble during the implementation phase. Otherwise, you can get into these rinse and repeat cycle, and that could be very expensive in general, right? So, how would
Yeah.
you? Yeah, go ahead.
As I said to my client, the in a transformation project, the most of the budget doesn't go to the implementation. What eats a lot of budget is understanding the need and making it and understanding it to the extent that we're gonna do the work only once. If you do things like this, the implementation will be very short and you won't be spending as much budget as if you don't understand the need as exhaustively as it needs to be, and you will have a lot of rework to be done. Sorry, I have interrupted you.
Okay, so maybe let's touch on some of these stories related to the requirements that you have seen in your experience. So let's say, I don't know if you get any sort of failed transformation projects or the transformation projects that were not as well done as you would have done as the business analyst. So when they came to you, what were some of the problems that you saw? Maybe talk about those specific problems without any ambiguity so that listeners can follow along in terms of what kind of problems that they can encounter, let's say if they are going to take this on themselves.
So, for example, in a recent project with the construction company, the the CTO of the company came to me because they wanted to automate the way they were sourcing the data from their clients. I mean, for example, you want uh, what they did is building floors, right? So you have different type of floors, and to build them, you need to know what's gonna be beneath the floor and what's gonna be on that floor. So they need to be able to make a quote for their client. They need to know a number of information, and one of them is what's beneath the floor, what the floor will be made of, what's their need. Is it just to be, I mean, a normal floor, or does it to be heated, or does it have to be some isolation with regards to the noise, etc. And what's gonna be on it? Like, for example, will it be wood or will it be PVC, etc. So we started working. He told me, okay, put in place a form. I just need you to take this form and automate it so I receive this information directly into the CRM and I can build my code. Okay, no problem. We do that. While building it, I realized that, I mean, you are building a house, so you might have different floors. You might have different needs. Maybe the ground floor needs to be normal, but upstairs you have the sleeping room, so you want it to be heated. Maybe the floor has to be heated. So after talking with the client, I asked him, but the form you gave me and you wanted to automate, you take into consideration only one need. But you might have a house, you might have a building, etc. How do you do with that? He told me, yes, this is true. You are right. We should be considering different configurations in terms of floors. So I had already started the project. Already started working with the implementation, and we knew only few days after we started that the need is not what the client has said, but something that is more complex that he didn't even think about. So it's really important to not take what the client tells you as being their needs at face value. You should always question those, challenge those, and remove any ambiguity.
Okay, very interesting. And when you get these coins, how do you sort of make decisions in terms of which technology is going to be the right fit for them? Because obviously, when they are looking at their own sort of business model, the number of tools that they might be using in their operations, finance, sales, marketing, everybody's sort of going to be using a lot of different tools. And sometimes it becomes very confusing even for clients in terms of how do you create that architecture, right? And they are not going to have as much expertise in the master data concepts. Sometimes they don't even care. Sometimes the departments are fighting with each other. They are like, okay, I only care about the procurement, okay?
Yeah.
Or I only care
Definitely.
about the sales and marketing. But typically, if you want these solutions to work, they all need to be on the same page. So what are some of the challenges that you have seen when they might be sort of overusing any specific tools or over engineering the architecture?
Yes, I have seen many projects where the clients try to over-engineer and make things very, very complex, only to come up with a solution that is not uh, as stable as they want it to be because the solution was not made for that. And when they came to work with us, we realized that there were a lot of workflows, a lot of functions, a lot of data that was not really well structured because they try to go beyond what the solution allowed them to do. It's like you are telling me you want to build a database with Excel. Yes, Excel will allow you to have a table with the different columns, etc. You can do data validation to make sure that you have only numbers in the column, etc. But it's not the most adapted tool for that. And once your company becomes a bit complex, the tool is no longer useful for that. So the same goes with ERPs and CRMs. I have seen clients who try to use CRM for a reservation system. Yes, if you adapt the CRM enough, you can do that, but it will never be a stable solution. So when they come to us, we try to undo that a bit and use the right system for everything they're trying to do. So the ERP is very good to manage your internal resources, your finances, your accounting, uh, your inventory, etc. The CRM is very good for your customer relationships, sales, having a clear view on your marketing, etc. But if you're trying to do something that doesn't have something to do with that, you need to find a specific solution that does that more or less already and adapt it to the specific needs that you have as a company.
Okay, amazing insights, man. And I think we can go probably for hours, and we might need to bring you back, in discussing these specific aspects of this interview. But for now, I think we are done. Do you have any last minute closing advice for our listeners?
I would just say that digital transformation is becoming a necessity for businesses today to stay competitive and evolve. So I'd recommend to really get informed and explore how it can benefit their business. As we said, time should be spent defining their specific needs with independent consultants that are not tied with the solution they're planning to use, and choose technologies, as we just said now, that fit their needs rather than just following the latest trend. It's not about implementing the best ERP or the best CRM. Sometimes an ERP and a CRM is not the best solution for you. Maybe you need the BI solution. Maybe you need something that is custom made with the local platform, etc. And I will touch on what we said earlier about the adoption. So any transformation program is only successful as your team's adoption of it. So develop a change management plan and involve your employees in the process to ensure always a smooth and successful transition.
Yeah, could not agree more. I think there are some great nuggets of wisdom there. And my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be companies put a lot of weight overall in a lot of different aspects. But I don't know how much they really understand that geography matters a lot. So make sure whenever you do any sort of transformation, make sure the team is going to have the necessary experience in that geography. That's probably going to be a make or break for your implementation. On that note, Wassim, really want to thank you for your time. This has been a powerful episode.
Well, thank you very much, Sam. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Of course. I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you are an European company that needs advice on the right technologies to invest in order to increase its productivity and reduce its costs, feel free to contact him via Overto's website www.overto.fr. It's www.overto.fr, or add him on LinkedIn. He regularly publishes content about current challenges and implications of transformation programs. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.